al Rebbe de Lubavitch y a su legado. Esta semana que viene se conmemoran los 27 años de su desaparición física y que su mérito siempre nos proteja. Estamos ahorita transmitiendo en simultáneo en Zoom, en Facebook Live y en YouTube Live. Es un buen momento para aquellas personas que quieran invitar a sus familiares o amigos a que se conecten. Pueden hacerlo en este momento para poder esparcir más aún los mensajes que les tenemos para esta noche. A pesar de que estamos en una pandemia, si fuera una situación normal, probablemente el rabino Jacobson estuviera en alguno de las ciudades de Latinoamérica dando una charla solamente a una comunidad. Pero gracias a la tecnología y viendo las cosas buenas de esta pandemia, ahora podemos estar toda Latinoamérica unida, escuchando a uno de los mejores oradores que tiene nuestra generación. Este evento está dedicado para Leilun Nishmat de Mendel Ben Mordechai Eliyahu Alav Shalom, y queremos darle un poquito de marco para que entendamos lo especial que es esta fecha. Estamos en la víspera de Guimel Tamuz, que es el Yortzeit del Rebbe, y queremos hablar de cuál es el legado que el Rebbe nos ha dejado en esta historia. Nosotros tenemos ahorita más de 3.500 instituciones de Chabad en el mundo. De ellas, más de 1.000 de ellas son instituciones educativas en más de 100 países. Chabad tiene presencia en más de 500 universidades con su programa de Chabad on Campus. Tiene un programa espectacular que se llama Chabad Terror Victim Project, que atiende a todas aquellas familias que han sido víctimas del terrorismo en Israel. Tenemos el Aleph Institute, que se encarga de visitar probablemente a los olvidados, que son a los judíos que están en cárceles, y no solamente a ellos que están en las cárceles, sino también a todas sus familias que están afectadas por cualquier cosa que haya ocurrido y por lo que ellos estén allí. Tenemos Friendship Circle en más de 81 ciudades, que es una asociación que se encarga de hacer actividades para las personas con necesidades especiales y personas discapacitadas. Tenemos a Chabad.org, que es el site de internet con mayor proyección del mundo judío. Tiene más de 100.000 páginas de contenido judaico, donde cualquiera de nosotros en cualquier momento puede buscar cualquier tema y encontrar una profundidad increíble de nuestra tradición. Y tiene más de 52 millones de visitas anuales, Chabad.org. Y esto sería imposible si no es porque están por detrás una estructura de Shluchim que arrancó el Frierdiker Rebbe, el Rebbe anterior, pero que nuestro Rebbe potenció de una manera increíble, y es el que ha logrado que ahorita tenemos más de 5.000 familias de Shluchim en el mundo haciendo y esparciendo este trabajo, que si estamos todos aquí es porque de alguna manera hemos sido tocados por alguno de ellos. Y para dar un poquito más de perspectiva, hay un reporte que sacó, se llama el Pew Report, que dijo cómo es la arquitectura del judaísmo hoy en día en los Estados Unidos, y ellos certificaron que más del 38% de las familias judías son de alguna manera tocadas por algún shliach de Chabad y asiste regularmente a alguna de las actividades que hace Chabad. Y de ese 38% de los judíos de Estados Unidos, el 75% son personas que se declaran como no ortodoxas. Y la mayoría de estas personas son niños, jóvenes, parejas jóvenes. O sea que la proyección de Chabad hacia futuro, si bien estas cifras que acabamos de compartir parecen increíbles, es solamente el comienzo, viendo lo que vamos a ver. Y parte de eso es porque los shluchim de Chabad son trabajadores a tiempo completo, no es que trabajan en horario de oficina de 9 de la mañana a 5 de la tarde, sino que están disponibles en cualquier momento, y por eso es el éxito que tienen en el mundo de hoy en día. Una de esas parejas de emisarios que queremos hoy invitar es el rabino Shneur Zalman Blumenfeld. Él es el shliach principal en Perú, de Chabad en Perú, y queremos invitarlo a que recite el capítulo de Tehilim del Rebbe, el capítulo 120. Para esto les voy a pedir que se pongan de pie.
Capítulo 120, el capítulo del Rebbe. Shir Hamailes el Adonai, Batzorosoli, Korosi Vayaneini, Adonai Hatzilo Nafshi Misfas Sheker, מלושן רמייה, מה ייתן לך ומה יוסיף לך לושן רמייה, חיצי גיבור שנונים עם גחלי רסמים, אויה לי כי גרתי משך, שוכנתי מאוהלי כדור, רבס שוכנו לו נפשי עם שונא שלום, אני שלום ויחיה דבר הימו למלחמה. La traducción. Canción de las gradas, clamé a Hashem en mi aflicción, y él me respondió. Hashem, libra mi alma de labios mentirosos, de lengua engañosa. ¿Qué puede darte y añadirte lengua engañosa? Flechas puntiagudas de un guerrero como brasas encendidas. Ay de mí por habitar en Meshech, por residir entre las tiendas de Kedar. Hace mucho que mi alma mora con los que detestan la paz. Yo procuro la paz, pero cuando les hablo, ellos procuran la guerra.
Muchísimas gracias, Rabino Blumenfeld. Cuando decimos que los shluchim no solamente son ellos, sino su familia, su esposa y sus hijos. Para poner un ejemplo, 2 de sus hijas estuvieron como morota aquí en Venezuela, porque al final un shliach no podría hacer su trabajo sin su esposa y sus hijos. Ahorita, para continuar el programa, quiero que pongamos mucha atención. Vamos a ver un video del Rebbe. Se llama Ser parte de la historia. Pongamos mucha atención para ver cuál es la importancia de esta fecha que estamos conmemorando y ver cómo nosotros también somos protagonistas de un día tan especial como hoy. Vamos ahorita a ver un video.
Is unter dem kommt a Reis betachlis a Schleimus unter die alle Joni von Gdusche v'ham Shoche v'hashro bis lemato mato. Kommt das herab zu die a Hilchen bei Queso und a Hilchen bei Drocho. Zu die, was haben Seche gewähnt, lernen Teile mit Piv, bechaim Chayose be'almodei. Wie bald da Divli Tzadikim Kayomim Loat kommt das Seche herab zu die, was lernen Teirose, af al Pi, was haben nicht Seche gewähnt, Herren Teile mit Piv. Das kommt echa Reisli Talmide, wie sagt in die Geres Akedisch. Und die, was eine verbunden mit die, was lernen Terose, das kommt echa Tarop leha Hilchim beir Chesor. Oder die, was tun, oder die in Jonim, welche hat gewollt haben, soll tun. Allachas kamen, wie kamen die in Jonim, auf welche hat sich Meister Nefesh gewählt.
The Rebbe gave you the feeling that the most important thing you can do is to help Yiddishkeit. He made each person feel as if you were on a mission. The way he influenced me was talking to me about Yiddishkeit. He felt that every Jew had this little pintel yid. There was just a little ember, a spark. Yiddishkeit was something that everybody had inside them.
חפיש בקנדה, ואם תמצא שם ששוחר, מה שלא מדביסי אותו, אז הייתי גם אותו שגם הוא יעשה וילמד לימוד ויעשה זה.
He had an influence on me and it influences my kids.
In jeder Dor ist ein anderer Rechnen Habiluri, Bemele meinte der Kirche der Heroin und dem Nordische Bechol Deva Dev. Der Rebbe, der Schwerste gewünschen, als jeder German und als viele Bocher soll werden an Nassen und soll nicht schon in sein Zwiebel, noch der Zwiebel noch, bedarf nicht an der Schmiere Schabbat, sie werden alle Bein, hat nicht a viele Fenkel, Schabbider ihnen soll der Doktor.
הפתיע את כולנו, הרבי מסתובב חזרה, הוא מגיע אליי, ובלי אומר או בלי דברים, בלי הסברים, הוא אומר לי, בלשון הזה, סידו הדיה אין הלוכה. אז האויסק בצורכי ציבור באמונו, שתית אחר פון מיני שאויסק בתור. Fortgesundheit, בהצלחה רבה ומופלגה.
I went into the Rebbe and told him that this Wednesday is my birthday. Maybe I shouldn't go to Wednesday hour that day, but instead, stay a whole day in 770 learning. Because, you have to do a Hisof in Nigla and a Hisof in Chassidus. When the Rebbe read my note, he said, Avadas also again. He said it with such emotion, such feeling that of course you should go. And he said you should tell them a special thing and do it, make it an extra special Wednesday hour, which I did my best to do. The Rebbe said that all the neshamas in Gan Eden and Afinu Nishmas Moshe Rabbeinu al Neshama are Mekana you. That showed how great this Indian of being Mekar of kids and making a bracha with a child and saying Shema.
Dann steht da jetzt die Sache, Ziddu werden noch mehr die Zerlasse im Wasser. Das sind diese Sachen. When I land at the airport in Barbados, a person comes over to me. Oh, yeah, you see on the faces of Europe she is. And he says to me, ich habe gereint in der Zeitung, als ein Schlichen von Lubavitcher Rebbe. Und fährt darum zu bechazig seine Jüdischkeit. Lass mich erzählen, wer ich bin. Ich bin a Kakafter der Monach Tfilin. Ich bin Nebuchadnezzar Machal Shabbos. Und ich bin Euchel Tafes. Azevi, these were his words. Ein Chovish Mater Atzme Beis Asirim. Seid mir Maske zum Rebbe. Der Rebbe came mir rausschleppen vom Worte. His name was Ayer Reib Speisman. Eventually, Speisman came to Brooklyn. The Rebbe told Yochanan Gordon to give this person an aliyah in his minyan. He was a Levi by the Rebbe's minyan.
In der Zielbahn geht zu Moshe Rabbeinu. Wir wird sich angerufen, B'Shem Rabbeinu. Aber Bishas ist angeführt mit der ganzen Eder. Und von der Scherede, von dem Eder, ist ein Ploffen Asep Zura. Ein 99 Schäferle, ein Ploffen im Midbar, hat sich gelost gehen und leben noch hier. Und hat dann noch gebracht, zurück in dem Eder, ein Stadles Miyuchodo, was sie gewähnt, Dafke der Fall, was sie gewähnt, Asep Zura.
My son Yoel was 13, and he went to Kol Shabracha, and the person he was with introduced him to the Rebbe and gave his name, Yoel Caroline. The Rebbe said to him, "You're Caroline from Philadelphia?" And Yoel said, "Yes." And the Rebbe took a bottle of vodka and gave it to Joel and said, "Please give this to your father from me." And Joel came home and gave me and said, "The Rebbe sent you a bottle of vodka." The Rebbe sent me a bottle of vodka. The Rebbe sent me a bottle of vodka. The next time that my connection to the Rebbe brought me to tears was last night, when I was thinking about what we're going to do today, and that they're asking me to be part of the archive of the Rebbe. And it's so typical of who the Rebbe is, that someone like me is actually a part of the story of the Rebbe.
Quedémonos con esa frase de que cada uno de nosotros somos parte de la historia del Rebbe. Cada uno de nosotros está aquí por alguna razón y el trabajo que cada uno de nosotros puede hacer es irreemplazable. Cada uno de nosotros tiene unas potencialidades y tiene unas habilidades y el trabajo que nosotros venimos a hacer para completar la misión de Dios en este mundo no puede ser hecho por otra persona. Entonces cada uno de nosotros tiene la responsabilidad no solamente de hacer la misión de uno, sino ayudar al resto de las personas a poder hacer su misión en este mundo. Y eso es el mensaje que el Rebbe nos da con este video y realmente es una de las particularidades de Chabad, que siempre está pendiente de que cada persona en cada momento pueda explotar su potencial sin importar qué va a hacer después. Lo importante es aprovechar cada uno de los momentos. Quiero ahorita nuevamente invitarlos a avisarle a sus familiares. Estamos prontos a comenzar la charla de Rabino Jacobson, así que pueden entrar por Zoom, por Facebook Live o por YouTube. Pueden todavía invitar para que más gente tenga la oportunidad de escuchar al rabino. Para darles un poquito, para aquellos que no conozcan al Rabino Jacobson, el Rabino Simon Jacobson nació en Brooklyn, en la comunidad de Crown Heights, en New York. Es autor del famoso y aclamado libro Hacia una vida plena de sentido, que estuvo en el New York Times bestseller. Es presidente y editor de el Allgemeiner Journal y el director de The Meaningful Life Center. Una cosa increíble en el currículum de Rabino Jacobson es que él formaba y lideraba a un grupo muy selecto de jóvenes que escuchaban cuando el Rebbe daba sus discursos, escuchaban atentamente a lo que el Rebbe decía en Shabbat y en las festividades, y como no se podía por la ley judía grabar o escribir lo que el Rebbe estaba diciendo, pero era tan importante que no solamente los que estaban en la sala escuchando, sino que todo eso quedara registrado y pudiese trascender para que todos los que estuvieran en todas partes del mundo pudiesen recibir ese mensaje del Rebbe. Él liderizaba a un grupo de jóvenes que memorizaba cada uno de los discursos del Rebbe para después escribirlos una vez terminado Shabbat o Yom Tov. Estamos hablando de una memoria increíble, privilegiada de este grupo de personas en el que Rabino Jacobson lideraba y lograron documentar más de 1000 discursos del Rebbe con esta metodología. Y pensemos también que a veces Shabbat cae con Yom Tov juntos, a veces Yom Tov son 2 días seguidos. Imagínense ustedes durante 3 días seguidos memorizar discursos del Rebbe para después sentarse después del Yom Tov o después de Shabbat a poder registrar lo que el Rebbe dijo y después difundirlo al resto del pueblo judío, como hoy lo vemos en las grandes bibliotecas, como la que tiene el Rabino justo atrás de él. La conferencia del Rabino se titula El Rebbe, un legado inmortal. Vamos ahorita, es muy importante que aquellas personas que entiendan inglés no tienen que hacer nada, pueden dejar sus pantallas como las ven, pero aquellas personas que quieran escuchar al rabino en español, ahorita en pantalla están viendo, ustedes apretan en el icono que están señalando y tienen que escoger 2 cosas, escoger el idioma Spanish y tienen que poner mute al original audio. Haciendo estas 2 cosas, van a escuchar entonces la traducción simultánea, que estamos muy contentos de contar con Ronnie Litmanovic de Panamá, que va a ser el encargado de poder documentar en español las palabras del rabino. So now let's welcome Rabbi Simon Jacobson, whose conference is called The Rebbe, an Immortal Legacy. Thank you, Rabbi, for being with us, and the microphone is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for honoring me. It's a great honor to be with you all this evening as we celebrate and remember and honor our great Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. This coming Sunday will be the 27th yahrzeit anniversary of when the Rebbe's neshama, in its own mysterious way, continued its journey. And yet, we see something really very perplexing and very strange. It's 27 years since the Rebbe was here physically in ways that we could see with our eyes. 29 years since the Rebbe suffered a terrible stroke in the year 1992. And yet, Lubavitch, Chabad, not only has not stopped functioning, but has doubled and tripled and quadrupled its efforts, its initiatives, the shluchim, the ambassadors of the Rebbe, all over the world. Literally, over 1,000 new shluchim of the Rebbe left their homes and their environments to go out on all four corners of the world, in every continent, in every state, in every city, literally in every part of the world, from Vietnam to Cambodia to Siberia, and of course, in all the cities that you live in, that we live in, wherever it may be. So people wonder, and I think it's important to address, how is it possible? I mean, anyone that runs a business, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that a company and a business without a CEO, without a president, without a leader, cannot last for very long. As a matter of fact, many companies with CEOs have challenges. And here, the leader, the spiritual leader, the Rebbe that single-handedly inspired thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, is not here physically, and yet not one shliach, not one employee of schools, synagogues, Jewish community centers, not one quit and left their job. And on the contrary, as I said, you see how much many more people have gone, people I meet, and they never saw the Rebbe in their lives. They only see a video, pictures, and yet they go out and dedicate their lives 24/7 to build institutions, to raise money. We all know how challenging that is. So what's the secret? I mean, every one of us would love to know what's the formula that a person can physically not be here and still continue to inspire a movement and thousands of young men and women. So the brief answer, my friends, is that the Rebbe is not a CEO. He's not the head of a company. The Rebbe is an embodiment of Am Yisrael Chai, of the eternity and the immortality of the Jewish people and the immortality of Torah that was given to us at Mount Sinai 3,333 years ago. And in an unbroken chain, we are still here. Despite the Holocaust, despite the pogroms, the Inquisitions, the Cossacks, the Crusades, the Babylonians and the Romans and the Egyptians, you name it. We Jews have gone through every possible form of oppression, genocides, expulsions, and yet we're here. Every one of you, every one of us is a living example of immortality. Everyone has their story. You go back 1, 2, 3 generations. Where did your great-grandparents live? What kind of challenges did they go through? How many were killed because they were Jewish? And yet we're here. The Rebbe personified and embodied that. Yes, a human being, but it was not about the person. It was what he stood for. And that not only lives on, but gets stronger. I remember Gimel Tamuz, 3rd of Tamuz is the day of the Rebbe's passing. 27 years ago. So I was a younger man, as we were all younger then. It was Saturday night. I was then on Tuesday, 2 days after, I was on Larry King, CNN, to speak about the Rebbe. And he asked me this question. He said to me, he said, I understand that Chabad Hasidim are in grief. They're mourning, they're grieving, they're sad. They lost their Rebbe physically. But why are you shocked? Why do I hear that people are shocked? The Rebbe was, after all, 92 years old. Nobody lives forever. What's the shock? This was live, so I had to answer on the spot. I didn't know he was going to ask me this question. So I said, and this was for an international audience, CNN, Larry King. So I said, you have to understand that for us, the Rebbe embodied and personified Torah, the immortal Torah that survived everything. So when mortality touches immortality, it's not just sad, it's actually shocking. So we're here right now to honor and celebrate and continue to perpetuate this immortal legacy of Am Yisrael Chai, of Nitzchis Ha'am, Nitzchis Yisrael, the eternity of a nation that's here close to 4,000 years. And despite all our difficulties, we're standing. We may be limping, we may be a little wounded, we all have our scars, but we're here. And that's something that needs to be respected and honored, because we often take for granted our blessings. We have to appreciate it. Each one of you, each one of us, everyone, is a living example, a dugma chaya, that carries the genes and the DNA of your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, all the way back to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. That's something. How many people can trace their lineage, and we know exactly who our grandfather and grandmother was 3,800 years ago? But it's not just enough to talk about immortality and appreciate it. We also are responsible. We're responsible to continue and perpetuate what this message is. To do that effectively, we need to understand, so what exactly is the formula? What did the Rebbe do that nobody else did, that can live on? And how can we replicate that in our lives? You know, everything we do is temporary. The food you eat, the money you make, we don't stay young forever. We're constantly going through changes. We age. Everything is impermanent in our lives. So how do we bring permanence and eternity and immortality into our own lives? So what I would like to do, being someone that sat at the feet of the Rebbe for many years, as was mentioned, my job, my work was to remember, absorb, retain, and remember hours and hours of the Rebbe's talks on Shabbat and holidays. There were no tape recorders, there were no notes, so we had to use our minds. Verbatim. We're talking about 10 times 100 pages, 120 pages of material. So thank God I was able to absorb a lot. Not everything, but I absorbed. And I always think about, how do you explain to someone that has never met the Rebbe the power of this individual? What did he teach? It's nice to say he was a spiritual leader, very charismatic, influenced, he inspired. But what did he teach that you can tell somebody to take home, a takeaway message, and say, now I understand. So though there's so many different things that we can share, I chose 5 primary themes, 5 primary principles that the Rebbe taught that I believe each one of us can incorporate in our own personal lives, in our family lives, our business life, our social life, that can literally change and transform who you are. And I also believe that when we appreciate it, we will recognize and see that the Rebbe, though 27 years ago he was physically taken from this world, will be seen and respected as the true first 21st century leader. Because what a Rebbe is a visionary. He's a visionary. He doesn't just see the immediate moment. He sees the big picture, understands the trends, the patterns that led us to here, and therefore can create a plan of how to build a better future. So who better to go to than a person of that type of vision? The leaders we have today are at best firefighters or administrators. So the vision of the Rebbe is even more relevant today than ever. So I'd like to, in brief, sum it up in 5 key principles that every one of us can understand and, as I said, incorporate. And the 5 are, I don't know what they are in Spanish, but I'll say it in English. They are an acronym, the acronym of MIPOD, M-I-P-O-D. To remember, if you have an iPod, just add an M, iPod. The first is M for mission. I will explain, but let me just lay them out. The I is for initiative. The P is for persistence. The O is for opportunities. And the D is for destination. 5 principles that the Rebbe continuously taught, and not just taught. He gave us tools and skills of how to implement them in our lives. So let's go through the 5. Let's start with mission. To get back again to a business example, something we all can understand. Whether you're a business person or not, is it possible for a business on this earth, any company, any organization, any entity, any institution, can they exist without a mission statement? The answer is unequivocally no, impossible. Every entity has to have a mission. What's your goal? What's your objective? What do you want to achieve? Without a mission, then different people and different ideas, what direction do you have? Even with a mission, companies need to have controllers, auditors, people who review and make sure that everything that's being done is aligned toward a goal, toward the objective. Just to use an example, Google's mission statement is to organize all the information in the world and make it accessible to everyone. Simple, one line, but unique, and their 80, 90, 100,000 employees and the billions of dollars that they generate are all driven by that one-line mission. So let me ask you a question. If no business can function without a mission statement, and if someone came to you for an investment in business and you said, what's the mission? And they say, we don't have one, or it's too complicated, or we have many options, you would never give them 1 penny, 1 piso. So then here's the question. How can you and I, as individuals, function without a mission? What's your personal mission statement? So most people answer to be happy, to make money, to bring up a healthy family. But those are beautiful things, but they're not a mission. To say that a company's mission is to be happy and have happy employees and make money, that's not a mission statement. Every company is supposed to have happy employees and make money. What's your unique mission that's unique to you? And here comes the Rebbe. 70 years ago, literally 70 years ago this year, the Rebbe formally assumed the leadership of Chabad a year after his father-in-law passed away. He already became Rebbe immediately, but formally. And he declares in his first official discourse that he delivered to the public that the mission of our time and this generation is to transform this world and bring and usher in world peace, a transformation of a higher consciousness, spiritual consciousness, what we call Mashiach and Geula. And he spelled out that every individual of this generation, that means you and I, everyone, was sent here for this reason. No, nothing is an accident. To discover and recognize your personal mission to use your skills and your personality and your gifts to make the corner of your world a little better place. To be an ambassador of light and kindness. So the Rebbe's first, most important statement of all is that you and I, and every person, was sent here for a purpose. Think about that for a minute. That means even though there are 8 billion people on this planet, almost 8 billion people, you have something unique to contribute that you and only you can contribute. I remember once at a Farbringen, a gathering, where the Rebbe would speak to everyone who gathered together. And the Rebbe saying, and he actually looked around at the crowd, and he said, every one of you has something to accomplish that no one but you can accomplish. Not Moshe Rabbeinu, and not the greatest men and women of history, because God would not send a duplicate. You don't need two of the same. If you're here, you have something unique to accomplish. You know what kind of empowering statement that is psychologically? I can tell you, as I speak to and deal with many people, I counsel people, I coach people. If every one of us knew that we were indispensable in the mission that we have, you know how many problems it would preempt and prevent? That understanding that every second you wake up in the morning and you are needed, not just by your family and community, but by the world itself and by God, to accomplish a particular mission. So mission changes the entire value of who you are. So that's principle number one, that you have a mission and you're responsible to find out what it is and act on it. Just to use myself as an example, when I was first touched and inspired, and my soul was ignited by the Rebbe, when I was around 16, 17 years old, I didn't know where my life is headed, but I knew I wanted to be part of a revolution to change this world in some way. Now, I gravitated, my talents are in communication, in writing, in speaking, in addressing psychological and spiritual issues. So that's what my mission became, that I would use my skills to help communicate and help people clear away the distractions that allow them to find their mission, for them to become better people. Each of you, every person, has something that's unique to you, and recognize that you are needed and you must find it because no one else can do it but you. So that's principle number one, the M of mission. Let's move now, principle number two, the I, initiative. The power of self-generated effort, not waiting till someone gives it to you on a platter and says, do this, do that, but you, on your own, initiate. You're proactive, not reactive. The Rebbe would fondly quote a verse in the Torah, in the Bible, that says that when the high priest would light the menorah, so he had to wait until the flame rose on its own. You know, when you light a menorah, Sometimes it takes a split second until it catches. So the word in the Torah is bahaloischa. You shall raise the flames. What does raise the flames means? You ignite flames, you kindle flames. Hadlokat hanerot, you light them. Because the goal was not just to ignite them, but to make sure that they rise on their own. Think about it in context of education, inspiration, relationships. A good teacher doesn't just teach data, information, and facts to a student, but teaches methodology. The teacher doesn't just teach you how to answer the answer to a question, but teaches you how to answer a question. So even when you're not in the presence of the teacher, your flame rises on its own. It's the empowerment with methodology. That's how you truly influence people. You don't just give them everything. You teach them how they themselves can develop and grow. In other words, you don't just teach them what to think, you teach them how to think. And that changes everything, because once you have those tools, then you don't have to be dependent, and every time you have a question, run back and say, what do I do now? Obviously, we always need advice and counsel, the power of initiative. And 70 years ago, again, the Rebbe said, I will help you. I don't decline from helping, but each of you have to do your part. The wisdom of that is also part of the secret of eternity, because today, every Chabad student, man or woman, has learned that. So yes, we look to the Rebbe for direction, but the Rebbe also said, do your part. So you have all these ambassadors and shluchim everywhere that are initiating, building institutions, all in the spirit of the Rebbe's teachings, but they've been empowered to rise on their own. So it's a lesson for ourselves and also for how we educate our children, and even how we love each other. That we don't just give everybody a gift, you also make sure that they know how to build and initiate and generate on their own. So that's point number 2. Principle number 3, P, persistence. It sounds like just another word. No, but it's key. Persistence means that when you believe in something and you're doing something good, you don't stop. You never stop. You only make it grow. The Rebbe was literally a living model of persistence. I mean, it brings me to tears to think how many times the Rebbe would repeat something, and how many times till he got it into the people's minds and hearts, with all the different resistance we may have and obstacles. Persistent, on and on. So I want to share a personal story when I was a child. This was in 1966. I was 8, 9 years old. So some of you have heard of 770 Eastern Parkway. That's the Chabad Central Headquarters. That's where the Rebbe lived. That's the Rebbe worked. That's where the Rebbe's Farbrengens were, where he davened. The main synagogue, the main Beis Medrash, the main study hall. 770 Eastern Parkway. After the Rebbe and his wife passed away in 1988, the Rebbe actually moved in there as well. Now, there's a holiday called Sukkot. Sukkot, we sit not in our homes. We build these portable shacks, and you sit in them, and you eat meals, and you sing, and you dance, you farbreng, you do everything you need to do in the sukkah. Now, in summer, in countries where it's warm, sukkah can be very pleasant. In New York, it's already the beginning of winter almost, autumn, winter, and it could be very cold, but it also can be very rainy. Now, in a Chabad sukkah, if you know Chabad sukkahs, they cover the sukkah, well, every sukkah is covered with vegetation, bamboos or evergreens, different types of vegetation. It has to be something that is porous, not a roof. You can't put a metal roof on it or any other. It's to be made of vegetation. In Chabad, the custom is that they cover the sukkah with very thick vegetation. So if it rains, in the beginning, it's very nice because the thick covering absorbs the rain. But once the rain continues and continues, it can become very, let's put it this way, unpleasant. Because then the water starts dripping down your neck and everywhere. Anyway, here's me, an 8, 9-year-old boy. I'm going to 770. That year, that Sukkot, 1966, didn't stop raining. Torrential flood. From the beginning of Sukkot almost till the end of Sukkot. But the Rebbe's custom was that on Sukkot, he had a farbrengen, twice actually, in the Sukkah. So here I arrive. I see the Rebbe sitting at the top, at the front of the Sukkah. On the sides are all the people, and in the middle. It's pouring rain. It's already dripping all over the place. Not just dripping, pouring. And the Rebbe is sitting oblivious, just speaking. The people were there because the Rebbe was there, but it wasn't very comfortable physically. I couldn't hear the Rebbe's words, especially with the rain, but I just saw this sight, an impressionable little child, an 8-year-old boy. And though I don't remember what I was thinking at the time, but I think back about it, and I said to myself, 1 second, why does the Rebbe have to do this? There's no mitzvah to have a farbrengen in the rain. Yes, if you're eating a meal in Chabad, even though it's raining, you eat the meal. But the Rebbe could have had a farbrengen inside without the food. They didn't eat much anyway. They said l'chaim. In the world there's a concept called a rain date. You push it off to another day. No. What left the impression in my mind is the Rebbe does something good. Doesn't matter if it's a mitzvah or you have to do it. He will not stop. The persistence, even in that rain. And though it's how many years since 1966? It's quite a while. We're talking about over 50 years. It left an impression on me that affects me till this day. I remember I began giving a class in 1982 to a group of people. And this class still goes on till this day, Wednesday nights. Trust me, there were many times I may have been under the weather, a cold, the weather, it could be a blizzard, but I never forgot the image. The Rebbe sitting in the sukkah with the rain. Something good, you don't stop. You continue, like the drops of water accumulate, and they ultimately can change reality. Keep that in mind, persistence. Start something good. Make sure it always continues. Because very often we get inspired, and then, the inspiration lasts, and then it dissipates. To make sure to continue something good. Until this day, I continued. I remember as a teenager, my parents they rented a home near the ocean, near the Atlantic Ocean in Brooklyn. And I went there sometimes at night. So I once went out to the ocean, middle of the night, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. The ocean, the waves. And these were one of my ruminations, one of my contemplations. I'm watching the waves. They keep coming and coming and coming. And I thought maybe if I wait long enough, maybe the sea, the ocean will go to sleep and the waves will stop. I waited. I literally stood there all night till 6 o'clock in the morning. You know what I learned? That the Rebbe was an ocean, relentless, persistent. The waves never stop. It taught me that in this world where so many things are temporary and so many things begin and end, there are some things that do not stop. They continue on in a relentless pursuit for greatness, for excellence, for changing the world. So that's principle number 3. And principle number 4 is opportunities. By the Rebbe, there was no such thing as impossible. There was no such thing as difficulties, simply meant an opportunity before us. And the greater the difficulty, the greater the opportunity. Another story, just to share this. My father, Gershon Jacobson was his name, passed away 16 years ago, was a journalist. He was a writer. He was close to the Rebbe. The Rebbe would speak to him very often. Well, in 1989, right before Rosh Hashanah, he had a stroke, a mini stroke, and he ended up in the hospital. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay. In NYU in Manhattan. On Erev Yom Kippur, the day before Yom Kippur, I get a phone call from the Rebbe's secretary that the Rebbe wants to see me. So I come running to 770. I stand outside the Rebbe's door. The Rebbe opens the door and gives me 2 pieces of honey cake. The custom is on the day before Yom Kippur, we give each other honey cake and we say it should be a sweet year, like the honey of the cake. Sweet cake, sweet year. The Rebbe gives me 2 pieces and says, this is for your father. Tell him he should have a sweet and healthy year. Okay, but then the Rebbe smiles and says, and tell him that when he finishes the mission for which he was sent to the hospital, he will be released. Well, what did I do? I picked myself up. I took the 2 pieces of cake. I went straight to Manhattan, brought them to my father, told him exactly what the Rebbe had said. Imagine, my father was not in the hospital because he had nothing to do with himself. Who goes to a hospital? Nobody wants to be in a hospital, especially on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. He went because he had a stroke and he had no choice. The Rebbe doesn't see it that way. He sees it that if you're there must be another reason, a deeper reason. The technical reason is the medical reason. But the true reason why God brought you there, because you need to meet somebody or do something that you could not do outside the hospital. So I told my father, what did he do? He spoke to doctors. My father was a person who knew how to communicate well. He did his thing. But just to show you that this wasn't just a cute, like joke or something, the day after Yom Kippur, Rabbi Chadakov, the Rebbe's chief of staff, his main secretary, comes to visit, and he wasn't well, he was an older man. He comes on the day after Yom Kippur to visit my father. And he says, the Rebbe wants to know whether you finished your mission yet. I had brought him the message. Now the Rebbe wants to know if you finished your mission. Well, the good news is that a few days later, my father left the hospital, came home, lived many more years. Clearly, he'd finished his mission. Do you see how a visionary, a Rebbe, thinks? He never looks at the moment. Of course, you have to go to the doctor and do what you have to do. But there's no such thing as just an event. Everything is an opportunity. Everything. Just like a good business person. Wherever they go, whoever they meet, is another potential opportunity. For the Rebbe, everything is a spiritual opportunity. If it's a good event, great. If it's a challenging event, it's also an opportunity. When you think like that, not only is it a positive way of looking at your life, but it also underscores what I said earlier about mission. Everything is part of your mission. Even the setbacks, even the times that you feel are darker, even in this case, my father in a hospital, always has deeper purpose and a deeper opportunity. And indeed, I asked my father later, and he said, yes, he met a few people. He doesn't know what the mission was exactly, but he did his part. He didn't just lie in bed. He spoke to the doctors and to the nurses and to the attendants and to the other, someone else was in his same room with him. We don't always know what it is, but we cannot just look at it, oh, I'm lying in a hospital bed, I'm a victim. There was no such thing as victim. You're never a victim. You control your attitude. You may not control your circumstances, but you control your attitude. And that attitude of everything is an opportunity. And finally, the D, destination. So just like you need to begin with a mission, which is the purpose, the next step is you need to come to a destination. You need to realize that purpose. Look, you can have a mission and then it can just go on forever. The Rebbe, and you could see it in every word that he spoke, in every interaction, was saturated with getting to the finish line of this long history of our lives. That we are coming to a point that after thousands of years of struggles and the millions and billions of good deeds and mitzvot and sacrifices that were done, we're coming to the finish line of a long marathon. In Torah, that finish line is called Mashiach, Geula. But essentially, again, in simple English, it is the idea that we are on a journey. The journey has a mission, but it also has a finish line, the destination, keeping focused on that. The Rebbe writes in a letter to a former president of Israel, President Ben Tzvi. And the Rebbe says, I apologize for not using the word Nasi, which means leader. Because since I'm a little child, I always envisioned the ultimate leader that would lead the entire Jewish people and the entire world to the destination of history, when we will meet our destiny, that everything we did, and even the challenges we had, will be understood with the coming of Mashiach. So it's hard for me to use that title on anyone but this ultimate quintessential spiritual leader. From his childhood, the Rebbe is envisioning. And indeed, in the first talks that he delivered 70 years ago, and 70 years, and all the talks after that, it was always the undercurrent, or very directly stated, that it's not a endless journey that has no destination. That all the work that was done will see fruit, will bear and see the fruit. That changes when you do something and you don't feel it's going to bear fruit, or you don't feel it's going to accomplish, then you do it, but you don't necessarily have that passion. So the destination, coupled with the mission, and in between, the initiative and the persistence and the opportunities, leads into a full picture. And I would say a formula that if we were to replicate that in our lives, everything would change. Not that our lives would, the technical part would change, but the perspective, the positivity, the confidence, and most important, to know that you are an indispensable soul in this world, sent by Hashem, sent by God. And in the morning when we say, Moda Ani, thank you for returning my soul to me, is declaring our mission statement and taking the initiative, being persistent no matter what, and seeing everything as an opportunity, leading us all to a destination, to a glorious destination. So we are the last leg of a marathon. Every generation before us carried the baton through its leg. We are now asked to carry the baton in that last leg, which simply means, in our own language, to make sure that you, your children, your sphere of influence, your friends, all recognize that we are here for a reason, to bring the glory, to bring the light, even the darkest corners. And everybody has that opportunity, because you all have your friends. We have today technology, social media. All you got to do is press a button and you can bring a message of kindness and a message of virtue and of light to millions of people, definitely to your circle. So I want to conclude with something the Rebbe always would say about himself. He says, when I speak and it doesn't yield results, which means people don't act on it, it's wasted words. So I feel, in the spirit of the Rebbe, the most important thing in an evening like this is not just to talk about it and to analyze and to provide the formula, but to act on it. And every one of us is part of this, not just the official Chabad Shluchim or the rabbis. Every individual has their own particular mission in this regard. And today, knowing modern physics and science, the butterfly effect, the ripple effect of one act, one good deed, one additional deed, one good word, one good thought. As Maimonides, the Rambam, says, that has the power to bring personal and global redemption to everyone individually and to the entire world. In these confusing and uncertain times, with all the different disruptions and upheavals going on, whether it's COVID, whether it's anti-Semitic attacks, whether it's Israel, and everyone in their own individual lives, this message is needed more than ever. We can never play defense. We have to be on the offense and say we have a message and a mission and a vision to bring to each other and to everyone around us. So Hashem and God should help us and bless you, every one of you, with many healthy years, much nachas and joy from yourself, from your family. And may we all do that one step. And that should be blessed, that we will all experience the great symphony that is made up of all the musical notes and all the contributions that each one of us brings to the table in a glorious symphony with the coming of Mashiach and Geula, the destination that will ultimately fuse matter and spirit, body and soul, form and function, a world that's aligned with the way God intended it in His purpose of creation. God bless you. Shem should bless you. May the schus of the Rebbe and our connection with him in these special days. We're coming from 80 years anniversary of the Rebbe coming to America, to this hemisphere. And as I said, 27 years from Guimel Tamuz, the 3rd of Tamuz. May the Rebbe continue to give us the strength, and may we do our part to make him proud, to make us all proud, to make God proud, and ultimately lead to that destination. Thank you again. It's a great honor to share a few words, and may everybody be well and healthy. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Jacobson, for your inspiration. I had the privilege with my family to be with you 3 years ago in a Pesach program in Washington, and it was really nice to interact with you today. De verdad que fue increíble estar hoy con el Rabino Jacobson. La maravilla de la tecnología hoy en día es que los invito a revisar las redes del Rabino. La página de internet es www.meaningfullife.com y su canal de Instagram, que por cierto tuvo un Instagram Live hace poquito en esta misma semana, es meaningful.life.center. Los invito a participar. El Rabino tiene esa capacidad de hablar cosas profundas, pero de una forma muy clara, sencilla y metódica, y tiene muchísimo material en línea que podemos seguir disfrutando. Entonces, de verdad, muchísimas gracias al Rabino. Nuevamente, ahorita vamos a tener la posibilidad, aquellos que escuchan, pueden entender inglés, no tienen que hacer nada, pero aquellos que quieren tener traducción al español, igual como lo hicieron antes, vamos a poder, abajo a la derecha, tienen que poner Spanish y tienen que poner otra vez mute para poder escuchar. En este momento vamos a presentar a Rabino Mendy Kotlarski, que es el director ejecutivo de Mercos 302, y podemos entonces escuchar un mensaje del Rabino Kotlarski. Adelante, Rabino.
My dear friends, what a special day. Between Chavches Sivan, the 28th of Sivan, the day when our Rebbe and Rebbitzin came from Europe to America, they were saved. And in the day which the Rebbe started his mission to reach every Jew and to bring Judaism to every Jew wherever they are. And as we're marking the unique and special day of Gimel Tamuz, when we introspect and when we think about our relationship with the Rebbe, let us, each of us, recommit to taking on one more Achlata Tova, one more good deed. Become an ambassador of Judaism. Become a mitzvah ambassador. Become a mini shliach. Don't leave the work only for the rabbis and the rebbitzins. Find someone, a family member, someone in your business, in your workplace, a neighbor, another Jew who is not exposed to Yiddishkeit, to the beauty of Chassidus, to the Rebbe, and share with them the beauty of Shabbat, the beauty of lighting Shabbat candles if it's a woman, or putting on tefillin if it's a man, buying Jewish books to have in their house, or putting up a mezuzah. Pick one of the mitzvot and share it with one more friend, and then with another friend, and then with another friend. So like that, on Gimel Tamuz, we can write to the Rebbe and send a message and a note to the Ohel, where we don't only ask for something that we need for a bracha, but we also can give the Rebbe some nachat. We can give the Rebbe a besura tova, a positive and impactful message that we are going to help win this war and fight the end of galut, the end of exile, by adding light to bring Mashiach Tzidkenu, so we can live in the ultimate utopia with the coming of Mashiach in Yerushalayim, Eretz Kodesh, speedily in our days, and each of us will do our part by being a shliach of the Rebbe to reach our friends and family and bring them into the atmosphere of Torah and mitzvot, bring them to the Chabad house, introduce them to the rabbi and the rebbetzin, so they can also experience the beauty of Judaism the way the Rebbe wanted each and every Jew to be able to have this beautiful mitzvah and interaction with Judaism.
Muchísimas gracias de nuevo al director ejecutivo de Mercos 302, a Rabino Mendy Kotlarski, por sus palabras. Los invitamos a utilizar el link que pusimos en el chat o que está en las invitaciones para mandar sus nombres para ser llevados a donde el Rebbe, y también para escribir sus resoluciones positivas, sus ahlaktot tovot, que hagamos en honor a Guimel Tamuz. Y que es una ahlata, que es una resolución positiva, de alguna forma, la fecha del Yortzeit de un Tzadik, como lo dijo el Rebbe en el video que vimos hace unos minutos, refiriéndose al Yortzeit de su suegro, él dijo: en este momento en que la santidad y la bendición descienden al mundo y empodera a sus seguidores y a los que siguen su ejemplo. Es un día muy especial, que están ocurriendo cosas, y lo mejor que podemos hacer nosotros es estar en sintonía con lo que está ocurriendo, y la mejor forma de estar en sintonía con el Rebbe es agregando actos de bondad, agregando mitzvot, cada uno a su nivel. Para esto queremos invitar a darnos un mensaje a el rabino Mendy Shem Tov. Él es sheliach en Chabad en Uruguay, y quiero contar una anécdota que me hizo recordar ahorita el rabino Jacobson, cuando dice que el Rebbe lo impresionó cuando estaba en la Sukkah y aunque estaba lloviendo, que eso lo inspiró desde chiquito para toda la vida. Nosotros, el rabino Shui Rosenblum, fuimos un grupo hace unos 8 o 10 años, fuimos un grupo en Guimel Tamuz a donde el Rebbe, y él cuadró con el rabino Eliezer Shem Tov, que es el rabino principal de Uruguay, el papá de Mendy, que lo vamos a escuchar en unos minutos. Cuadró para escuchar de él un shiur de Hasidut justo antes de Shaharit. Y bueno, ese era un día muy movido. La verdad que no se dormía mucho en ese viaje. Nos acostamos muy tarde, nos levantamos muy temprano para llegar a tiempo a donde el rabino Shem Tov. El shiur lo cuadramos que sea justo donde el rabino Jacobson mencionó que el Rebbe asumió el liderazgo del movimiento Chabad hace 70 años, y fue en ese lugar, en un lugar que es pequeño, que está lleno. Los que lo conocen, 770, son unos tablones de madera, no muy bonitos, no muy cómodos, pero bueno, llegamos al lugar, nos sentamos y estamos esperando que el rabino Eliezer se presente para darnos el shiur. Y bueno, nos dimos cuenta que había una persona durmiendo en uno de esos tablones, tapada la cara con el sombrero, y de repente, cuando estamos todos listos esperando que llegue el rabino, se para esta persona que estaba ahí acostada. ¿Y quién era? El rabino Eliezer Shem Tov, que como había venido de una noche de Fabrengen, de celebraciones, de shiurim, él quería estar seguro de no perderse, estar a tiempo para el compromiso que había adquirido con un grupo de Venezuela para darles un shiur de Hasidut antes de Shaharit, y decidió: mejor me duermo en el lugar donde quedé, que iba a hablar con ellos, para asegurarme de estar perfectamente a tiempo. Yo no recuerdo de qué fue el shiur del rabino Shem Tov, pero esa acción que el rabino hizo, la fuerza del ejemplo, hace de que nunca nosotros, ese grupo de hombres que estábamos ahí, vamos a olvidar lo que el rabino hizo. Así que es muy importante que nosotros cuidemos el ejemplo que damos a otros, porque las impresiones, buenas o malas, quedan para siempre. Entonces, bueno, quiero darle la bienvenida a Rabino Mendy Shem Tov, que sus hermanos también, Meir y Zalman, estuvieron en la Yeshiva Gedolá de Venezuela. Así que al final estamos todos conectados. Adelante, Mendy.
Bueno, la verdad, para empezar, un lejaim, a fin y al cabo, así que un lejaim para todos. Que todas las palabras que escuchamos y que vimos y vivenciamos en la última hora nos penetre y nos siga inspirando a partir de este momento en adelante. Lejaim. Ya hice la braja antes. En realidad me pidieron que comparta unas palabras para cerrar el Fabrengen. Voy a decir dos cosas. Si bien cada Fabrengen tiene un lejaim, por lo menos un lejaim, hasta 4 se puede, dijo el Rebbe, hasta los 40 años. Pero también cada Fabrengen necesita tener lo que se llama un poel mamash. ¿Qué quiere decir? Una acción concreta. Y de hecho el Rebbe en los Fabrengens, en las reuniones hasídicas, el Rebbe siempre instaba a que la gente tome una resolución concreta, más allá de la inspiración y lo vivido durante el Fabrengen. Y de hecho, cuando los Fabrengens eran el día de semana, el Rebbe al concluir el Fabrengen repartía billetes de $1 a un grupo de gente que se encargaba después de distribuirlo entre todas las personas presentes en el Fabrengen, porque cada persona se vaya de ahí dando tzedakah cuando vuelva en su casa o en camino a su casa. Entonces, en otras palabras, el Rebbe no quería que el Fabrengen termine en una noche de inspiración donde uno escuchó cosas lindas, ideas, emociones, canciones, lejaim, sino que todo eso también principalmente desemboque en una acción, por lo menos empezando una acción de tzedakah y después vemos qué más podés hacer cuando llegas a casa. Entonces, y de alguna forma, hoy noche, después de escuchar las lindas palabras, muy lindas palabras de Rabino Jacobson y de hecho quiero comentar que el Rabino Jacobson tiene un libro muy conocido, es Una vida plena de sentido. Acá en Uruguay, cientos y cientos de familias tienen ese libro en su casa. De hecho, hoy alguien me llamó y dice, Mendy, preciso 5 libros de Una vida plena que quiero regalar a amigos. Justo hoy me llamó alguien pidiendo 5 copias del libro porque lo quiere regalar a conocidos. Y entonces su libro, y bueno, hoy acá lo tenemos presente. De hecho, si alguien quiere una copia del libro, puede acercarse a su Bet Chabad más cercano, seguramente va a poder conseguir copia. De todos modos, después de escuchar, vimos el video del Rebbe al principio, y después vimos el video al principio, y también vimos y escuchamos las palabras, bueno, de nuestro maestro de ceremonias y de Rabino Jacobson. ¿Cómo cerramos esto? Cerramos esto pausando unos minutos antes de irnos o volver a nuestros quehaceres, pero pensando unos minutos antes, ¿qué cosa concreta puedo hacer yo a partir de este momento diferente o adicional a lo que vengo haciendo hasta ahora? No siempre tiene que ser algo grande. De hecho, las cosas grandes no perduran en el tiempo cuando uno toma una decisión demasiado grande. Entonces hay que pensar unos minutos algo concreto, real, que yo sé que voy a poder hacer y que se va a poder mantener en el tiempo. Y quizás antes de eso, decidir, bueno, ¿por cuánto tiempo quiero hacer la siguiente? ¿Será por una semana? ¿Por un mes? De acá hasta Rosh Hashanah, por ejemplo. O a partir de ahora en adelante, como dijo Rabino Jacobson, algo bueno, seguir y no pararlo. Pero de todos modos, sea como sea el plazo que uno se ponga, teniendo el plazo ya decidido, hay que decidir algo concreto. A lo mejor decidir hacer algo no tan grande, pero concreto y que se mantenga, a algo grande que el día siguiente, o algo grande que al día siguiente ya no se puede seguir. Entonces eso es un concepto básico e importante, no solamente para el Fabrengen de hoy, sino para todas las reuniones hasídicas y reuniones en general donde uno se junte para inspirarse. La inspiración tiene que desembocar en una acción concreta. Quiero compartir, antes de terminar, una idea que recuerdo haber escuchado, una historia de un niño que que para el cumpleaños del Rebbe decidió tomar una resolución, como se llama Hlatat Tová, una buena resolución, y su decisión fue empezar a recitar cada mañana, antes de salir de la casa, las bendiciones matutinas, las Birkot HaShachar, que muchos de nosotros no sabemos de memoria, porque lo venimos diciendo desde que somos muy pequeños. Y este chico también ya lo sabía de memoria, y son bendiciones donde agradecemos a Dios por la vida, por la vista, por la ropa, por el cuerpo, por la Torá que nos dio por ser judíos. Bendiciones muy hermosas que hicimos cada mañana antes de empezar el día. Y muchos lo saben de memoria. Y este chico también lo sabía de memoria. ¿Y cuál fue su resolución? Él escribió al Rebbe diciendo que en honor al 11 de Nisan, cumpleaños del Rebbe, él decide empezar a recitar cada mañana las brajot de la mañana mirando adentro del Sidur. O sea, no de la memoria, sino con el libro abierto, mirando las palabras, tal como el Rebbe hacía. De hecho, al cumplir cada Fabrengen, el Rebbe abría su Sidur y hacía la bendición muy cortita que sabemos que se hace al finalizar la comida. Y el Rebbe recibió esa carta de ese niño con esa resolución que tomó en honor al cumpleaños del Rebbe como regalo y obsequio al Rebbe por sus años. Y la recibió entre miles y miles de cartas con deseos y resoluciones y pedidos, miles, literalmente miles de cartas. Y el Rebbe le respondió a ese niño. El Rebbe a ese niño le respondió y dijo, muchas gracias, la buena noticia. Y el Rebbe le dijo lo siguiente, dice, tu noticia fue para mí como una expresión que dice, K'maim karim al nefesh hayefa, como aguas frías volcadas sobre un alma cansada. Ahí está cansado y precisa que refrescarse y alguien le tira agua fresca, eso lo despierta. Pero dice, tu buena noticia fue para mí como agua volcada sobre un alma cansada. O sea que en otras palabras me trajo mucho placer. Me refrescó, me trajo un placer especial tu buena resolución. Y volviendo a lo que dijimos antes, ¿qué gran cosa fue esa resolución? Podemos pensar en cosas más grandes. Bueno, sí, quizás hay cosas más grandes, pero esto era algo concreto, y para ese chico no era quizás algo tan chico, pero de todos modos era algo que él sabía que lo iba a hacer, y quizás con un poco de esfuerzo, que hasta ese momento no había invertido en sus bendiciones, un poco más de esfuerzo, y eso es un poco el concepto que quiero transmitir en este momento, después de una noche así donde escuchamos sobre la importancia del individuo y todas las cosas que hacemos o no hacemos, nuestras palabras, pensamientos y acciones, tomar una decisión, algo concreto, que vamos a hacer en honor, como consecuencia de este Fabrengen, y en honor al 3 de Tamuz, que comienza este sábado noche y domingo, conmemorándose 27 años de la desaparición física del Rebbe. Y cierro con un concepto, y es que cuando empezó la primera vez que apareció el tren, que una locomotora que llevaba detrás vagones sin un caballo o caballos que lo lleven, como estaban acostumbrados hasta ese momento, se cuenta la historia que había mucha gente que fue a ver la plataforma, primer tren que iba a partir de la estación. Y después de toda la introducción y un conteo de los minutos, de los segundos, termina con un campanazo y la locomotora se empieza a mover. Pero la locomotora se movió y el resto del tren quedó atrás. ¿Qué pasó? Alguien se olvidó de conectar la locomotora con el resto del tren. Entonces estaban todos los vagones, estaba la locomotora, estaban funcionando, empezó a moverse sin los caballos, pero no se llevó al resto del tren porque había un gancho que se faltó hacer. Entonces cuando hablamos de nuestra inspiración, que viene a ser una locomotora, para inspirarnos a llevar el resto del año, el resto de nuestras vidas en la dirección correcta, de manera inspirada, precisamos el gancho, precisamos que cada uno de nosotros tome una decisión concreta, de una acción concreta, que sirva de gancho para traer esta inspiración y lo que esta noche representa, y el 3 de Tamuz, lo que los días estos representan y significan para cada uno de nosotros, y como mencionó David, la santidad y las bendiciones que vienen al mundo en el día del Yortzeit del Rebbe. Tomemos cada uno una decisión concreta, sea lo que sea, una mitzvah. Cada mitzvah es una mitzvah se mencionó antes, y es algo que tiene que ver con tefilín, o con mezuzá, o con kasher, o con pureza familiar, estudio de Torah, libros, educación judía, amor al prójimo, tzedaká, velas de Shabbat. El Rebbe, a lo largo de los años, habló y lanzó 10 campañas de mitzvot diferentes para inspirarnos y promover el cumplimiento de mitzvot concretas en la vida de cada uno. Y todos podemos, con una de las 10, mejorar algo o compartirlo con otros. Una cosa que quiero mencionar dentro de eso es que el Rebbe también lanzó la campaña Estudio Diario de Rambam y del Sefer HaMitzvot, que si Dios quiere, este año, el 3 de Tamuz, se concluye el ciclo número 40 de Estudio Diario de Rambam. Es una oportunidad para quienes quieren involucrarse y comenzar de nuevo, de cero. El ciclo comienza el lunes. El lunes comienza el nuevo ciclo de Estudio Rambam diario, 3 capítulos de Rambam por día, un capítulo de Rambam por día, o el Sefer HaMitzvot, que es el más accesible que todos. Pero todos tenemos acceso y todos podemos ser parte y unirnos por medio del estudio diario de Rambam, y unirnos a través de eso con millones de judíos alrededor del mundo, estudiando lo mismo cada día, y de esa manera también conocer todas las 613 mitzvot, cosa que es solamente posible estudiando el Rambam diario. Así que os invito a todos a tomar una resolución, cualquiera sea, en este momento, para entonces asegurarnos que este Fabrengue no fue solamente una noche de inspiración, sino una noche que servirá de locomotora para inspirarnos el resto del año. Hasta muy pronto vernos con Mashiach y en la lección final en Jerusalén, todos juntos en casa, como tiene que ser. Lejaim, y gracias a todos por sumarse al Fabrengen de hoy, que nos veamos todos juntos en el gran Fabrengen con Mashiach, en el tercer Bet HaMikdash en Jerusalén. Amén. Lejaim.
Lejaim, Rabino Shem Tov, muchas gracias por sus palabras. Quiero invitarlos ahorita para que veamos dónde estamos cada quien, a poner en el chat en qué ciudad y en qué país se encuentran, para que todos podamos compartir un poquito más de ver lo increíble de la tecnología de hoy, de cómo podemos hacer las cosas en simultáneo y tener gente de esta calidad que pueda darnos estos mensajes. Queremos dar un agradecimiento muy especial a Mercos 302 en español por realizar este programa, encabezado por su director general, Rabino Mendy Kotlarsky, y al coordinador de Mercos 302 en español, el Rabino Hai Kohan. Y quiero realmente agradecer a mi rabino, Shuvi Rosenblum, que me dio la oportunidad de estar hoy aquí en la noche, y al rabino Hai Kohan. De verdad que ha sido una experiencia muy bonita. También queremos agradecer al rabino Simon Jacobson, y queremos nuevamente invitarlos a seguirlo en todas sus redes para poder seguir profundizando en todos los temas que él aborda todas las semanas. Realmente fue una disertación increíble, y aprovecho para decir que este evento va a ser montado en la plataforma de YouTube en los próximos días para aquellos que quieran repasar o compartir las palabras del rabino Jacobson. Queremos agradecer al rabino Blumenfeld por haber dicho el Tehilim del Rebbe, y al rabino Mendy Shem Tov por sus palabras respecto a las resoluciones positivas. Recordando de nuevo que en el chat tenemos el link para poder cargar las resoluciones positivas de cada uno, y también para poder escribir los nombres que serán llevados en Guimel Tamuz al Ojel del Rebbe. Queremos dar un especial agradecimiento a Levi Cyper por la parte técnica de todo el programa, que ha fluido de manera increíble, y al rabino Mendy Druckmann y a Mushka Kohan por todo su trabajo de diseño, tanto en el día de hoy como en todas las promociones que se hicieron circular en los días anteriores. También queremos agradecer a Jem, a Jewish Educational Media, por el video del Rebbe, y a Chabad Aror por la plataforma de Facebook. Hoy nos acompañaron tanto por Facebook como por Zoom, como por YouTube. Y bueno, realmente ha sido un privilegio estar con ustedes. Queremos agradecer también a nuestro traductor, que hizo una labor increíble, a Ronnie Litmanovic de Panamá, y a todo el equipo que está detrás de estos eventos, que con el favor de Dios se repitan pronto. Muchas gracias a todos, y ahorita los voy a dejar para un mensaje final con el rabino Hai Kohan, que es el coordinador general de Mercos 302 en español. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias a todos por haber participado de esta noche especial. Un agradecimiento especial al señor David Friedson de Venezuela por la conducción de este programa, el maestro de ceremonias, que nos estuvo acompañando durante toda esta noche. Dios mediante, el día domingo 3 de Tamuz, en ocasión a la fecha, estaremos yendo al Ohel del Rebbe. Para todos aquellos que quieran que sus nombres y de sus seres queridos sean llevados allí, pueden hacerlo, pueden dejar sus nombres en el link, a través del link que aparece en el chat. Así nos aseguramos que todos aquellos que quieran que sus nombres sean llevados los llevemos. Y tienen tiempo de hacerlo hasta el viernes. Nuevamente, para poder que sus nombres sean, para que llevemos sus nombres, lo pueden hacer a través del link que aparece en el chat. Desde ya, esperemos que se hayan inspirado esta noche y Dios mediante estaremos en contacto para futuros eventos. Un saludo a todos.